Hi folks, Jeff here from JPR Leatherworks. Hey, I want to talk to you today about edge beveling. It's something that we're always told we should do, but probably most of us don't even know why and how may be just kind of left up to the wind. So I thought I'd talk a little bit today about how to do edge beveling, why to do edge beveling, and what tools to use. I'm going to start off with the why. If you take a look at this piece of scrap leather I've got sitting around my bench, you'll see the edges are completely flat. In other words, they come up 90 degrees, go straight back down at 90 degrees. Nothing wrong with that. Structurally, that is not a problem. And there are times when you want that. But honestly, it doesn't look that good. It kind of jabs you in the eye, if you know what I mean. It's a little bit abrupt. And it would be nice to break that off, break the edges, so that they kind of are a U-shaped thing, an upside down U. Beveling edges is not unique to leatherwork. Do beveling edges in lots of different crafts. When I was working in the cabinet making shop, we would always bevel the edges. We called it knocking the corners off. Just take a sander and knock off the corners. It just really is all about a more pleasing look. And that's about it. I wish I could tell you there's some great structural integrity issue. There just isn't. So let's take a look at how to do this. The first thing you need to know is what tools you're going to use. Well, the first tool I use, if I don't know the answer to this question already, is a good caliper. So I can find out what the thickness of my leather is. So I'm going to set this to 0, and then we'll just test this. And it looks like it's approximately a 3 mil leather, 3 millimeters thick. So the reason we measure that is so that we can know which edge beveler to use. This is an edge beveler. You can buy them all over the place. You can buy cheap junk ones. You can buy really expensive ones. You can kind of go down the middle of the road. The ones I use day in, day out are from a company called Alden. They're really nice. They fit in my hand really well. I've got these big monkey hands. They fit in there real nicely. They are very, very good quality steel, and they retain their sharpness, so I'm not sharpening my tools all the time. I am honing them quite often, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, but that's the tool I use. You can use them you can get very expensive ones, 100, 150 bucks a piece. I don't know about you, but I can't afford that. So I buy these, and I've used some of those expensive ones before. Sure, they're great, but are they worth like 6 times what I paid for this? I paid 25 bucks, rough give or take, for these. I think you can still get them for that price. They're not worth 6 times that. They're a little bit nicer, but this is definitely the tool set that I use. If you want, I've created a video as a review of these things, and I'll put a link to it down below in the comments. So you can look at that if you'd like to. But that's what I use. Honestly, you're probably not going to go wrong. The problem with the cheaper tools is you have to hone them more. You have to, I'm going to say sharpen, although we really don't sharpen them. I'll talk about that in a second. We hone them. So you're going to have to sharpen them a lot more often. It's not that big a deal, but good quality give you a little bit better cut, and you won't spend all your day sharpening your tools. Now, speaking of sharpening, I learned this from a mentor, I always put my tools away dull. I never sharpen them before I put them away. The reason is consistency. When I pick up a tool off my workbench, off the shelf where it's hung, anything like that, I know for a fact it needs to be honed. I need to deal with the edge. Because last time I put it away, I didn't do that. So it's just consistency. It's not a big deal either way. I think, whichever you wanted to do, it's just the habit I've gotten into. So I am going to show you how to hone these things. Now, the difference between honing and sharpening is one of degree. When you sharpen something, you're taking away metal to get it to a particular bevel, a certain degree, whatever that degree for that knife or that cutting device is. When you're honing, you're simply cleaning up the edge. As I use this tool, it's going to collect dirt on there. It's going to collect grime. It's also going to take that perfect edge off. So when we hone it, all we're doing is putting that perfect edge back on. We're not sharpening it at all. Some people call it stropping, honing, same thing. Just like if you have a straight razor that you shave with, you know it's very, very sharp. But before you go to shave, you take it on your strop and you give it a couple of passes through. So it just gets that perfect edge. Well, that's exactly what we're doing here. Now, I brought over to the workbench an Alden number 4 and a number 5. The number 5 is slightly bigger. And by the way, the numbers don't correspond to anything in any other company. So each company has its own numbering systems. Some are numbered 0 through whatever. It's you'll just have to know your company and which one it is. But in the set I've got, 1 is the smallest, meaning the distance between these prongs is narrow, and 5 is the largest. So which one should I use? Well, if you're working with a company that's got a good quality product, they'll be able to tell you. They will say that for leather that is this thick, you should use a number whatever. A number 3, or excuse me, a 3mm piece of leather is definitely going to want to use a number 5. I'll use the number 4 to show you what happens when you use one too small. It's not that big a deal, but I'll show it to you. But we're going to use a number 5, the biggest one, on this leather. So let me show you. I've got this honing jig. It's got ridges built into it for each of the sizes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So and each one obviously is a little bit bigger than the other. So I'm just going to take a piece of high grit sandpaper. I don't know what this is, but it's very, very fine. Because I'm trying I don't want to take away any metal. And I'm just going to put the ridge in between these two grooves, put the tool over the sandpaper, and then just run it down the ridge. I'm going to do that 2 or 3 times. You'll know, because when you're first doing it, when you first run this down, it grabs a little bit, and you'll feel that if you pay attention. And then after a few passes, it'll just be smooth. And that's all there is to honing this thing. So I'm going to put this jig away, and we're going to take a look at this leather. It's not a great piece of leather. That's why it's scrap. So I'm going to turn it over, and there may be a reason for this, but it's more, to me, it's just kind of tradition. It's the way I've always done it. Always edge the flesh side first, the rougher side. So to do it, you're just going to put that groove over the top of, so that the 2 prongs fit on either side of that sharp edge. Now, the 2 mistakes that you can make, you can move your arm and your hand, your wrist, in such a way that you're going not 100% parallel to this. If you do that, let me just show you on this short edge. Let's exaggerate a lot. You see, I'm just cutting into it. I'm not really getting anywhere. Or if I waver, I get this kind of real grooved look, kind of a scallopy. I'm obviously exaggerating. It's a little hard to see, but you don't get a nice clean edge that way. If, on the other hand, I go too shallow, I don't take anything off. So what's the right angle? I don't know. You're just going to have to practice with it to get it. I don't know, is that about a 15-degree angle, something like that? I don't really know. But you'll get it because you'll take off the right amount, and most importantly when you bevel the edges is a consistent amount. That's what you're really working for as you practice this. And I'd recommend you just get a whole bunch of scraps like this, bevel the edge, cut a piece off, bevel the new edge, cut another piece, and just go through your scraps that way. It's a good way to use up scraps practicing this beveling. And as you get it, the most important thing to practice is to make sure that you're consistent. How far you angle up and down, left and right, isn't as important as consistency. Then all you're going to do is try to take one nice smooth motion, keeping your angles consistent, and peel off. When you can get a nice string, broke, but when you can get one nice long continuous string like that, you know you've done it well. Now I've taken off the edge there. If I try to do it again, it will take off next to nothing because I've already done that. And now I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. So once again, I'll keep a consistent angle. I don't need to go fast. I just need to be steady. Once again, take off that nice string. They don't always hold together like that. That's unrealistic. But you're wanting a long, smooth cut through that leather. So what I have now, you can't really see it, but I have an edge where it's angled over here, flat across the top, and then angled back down this side. That's not ultimately what we want. It's the first step in a process. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how you take this and finish it so you have a nice, smooth, rounded edge. And we'll talk about finishing it and how you burnish that, we call it, and finish the edge. There are multiple different products to use to do that. We'll talk about those in the next video. But that's really all there is to beveling. Let me show you real quickly. If I use a number 4 here, which is too small, nothing really bad is going to happen. Let me give this a quick couple of strokes. Sorry, sometimes I have a hard time finding that ridge. There we go. All right. If I use too small of a beveler, nothing bad's going to happen. I'm just going to take off very little amount of leather. And then I'm going to, my process of going back to round this in the next step is just going to take a little more work. So that's a much more pronounced angle and then flat and then angle. So I'm going to have to spend more work on that with this case. The number 5 did a good job, just left it exactly the way I want it to take it to the next step. On the other hand, if you had a thinner piece of leather and you used too big of a piece of a beveler, it could cause problems. So if you're in doubt, use the smaller one. And then you can always take that back and go over it again with your larger beveler, larger size, and maybe get a little bit more off. I guess this was the smaller side. And you can take off, you can see I'm taking off a tiny little bit, just hairs. So there's not a significant difference between them. Anyway, folks, that's what it means to bevel the edges of a piece of leather. And we'll take that in the next video, move on to the next step, and dress that up so it looks real nice. Hey, thanks very much for watching the usual YouTube chatter about, please subscribe, please like it. It helps me out. So I appreciate it. And I will see you next time.